Nobody knows.
Early Chinese immigrants were a welcomed part of American society. These men were usually wealthy businessmen or skilled artisans that were appreciated for their contributions and work. It wasn't until the creation of the Western Pacific Railway and the upstart of the California Gold Rush that more unskilled and hard-labor Chinese immigrants started to arrive. This new influx of workers was not welcomed for many reasons. Firstly, during the end of the gold rush year of 1855, many Californians found themselves with few career opportunities and even fewer reliable wages. The Chinese population was seen as competition and a threat for domestic jobs. According to the ideology of the white miners, competition with the Chinese was unfair because the Chinese were neither independent producers nor wage workers. Instead, low-cost Chinese labor was considered a type of slavery. Furthermore, a great deal of anger was displaced on the Chinese for their unwillingness to adapt to the culture of American society. Ethnically, the Chinese have never placed rules that define labor by gender. However, American ideology did not take kindly to this belief. Chinese men had established an economic niche for themselves in laundries, restaurants, and domestic service, all occupations traditionally assigned to women. With such differences in culture coupled with the recent end of the gold rush, Americans placed their anger and blame on the Chinese. Inevitably, lawmakers were soon sought after to alleviate some of this hatred.
It may be hard to believe right now, but the earliest enforced immigration restrictions passed in the United States targeted Chinese. These were the Chinese exclusion laws, which were in effect 1882 to 1943, and were passed against a group that at the time only constituted about 0.2% of the national population. The context in which this very strong hostility to Chinese and concerns about immigration arose was that during the 1870s, the United States was experiencing very serious economic depression. This also combined with California's status as a swing state in presidential elections. And at that time, most Chinese were in California, and California was very concerned about its Chinese problem. And in pursuit of California's votes and the very strong feelings of powerful parties within California, particularly the labor movement, national politicians took up the cause of the anti-Chinese movement, and the legislation was passed with a wide majority in 1882. And it is important to remember this longer history because it highlights the ways in which up until 1965, immigration restriction in the United States was based on categories decided by race and national origin. And so when we look at this problem of border control and border enforcement, every sovereign nation, of course, wants to be able to control who enters its borders, who remains, but we have to remember there is this powerful legacy of associating illegal immigration, undesirable immigration, with particular races of people.
1943 was another prominent year for immigration in the U.S. as the Magnuson Act was signed into law by Franklin D. Roosevelt. This piece of legislation was known as the law that repealed and nullified the restrictive Chinese Exclusion Acts of 1882. Additionally, it finally allowed Chinese immigrants who had been living in the United States for over a set number of years to gain citizenship. It wasn't until 1952, when the McCarran-Walter Act was passed, that the U.S. started to again increase Chinese immigration in the United States. Although this act was criticized and vetoed by President Harry Truman, stating that it was too discriminatory, it was still passed. This law signified another step in the U.S. trying to push for immigration reform, amending Asian exclusion policies once again, and allowing for an influx of skilled workers to immigrate in a nearly free manner. The U.S. pushed for more immigrants to enter the country. Chinese immigration has gone through a long history of being rejected of entry to the United States, but during the year of 1965, all that was changed. When John F. Kennedy became president in January 1961, he carried with him a pledge to the American people that he would earnestly work for immigration reform. His leadership in this would become a significant contribution to the Immigration Act of 1965.
You live in a defended island of freedom, but your life is part of the main. So let me ask you as I close to lift your eyes beyond the dangers of today to the hopes of tomorrow.
President Kennedy was never able to officially implement his ideas during his short presidency, but left it for his colleague, Lyndon B. Johnson, to carry out. The Hart-Celler Act was signed and passed in 1965 by President Johnson, and this removed the national origin system and increased the quota to allow an additional 20,000 immigrants to enter each year per country. But in terms of immigration progress, 1965 was a pinnacle moment for the Chinese as well as other nationalities. Starting in 1882, Chinese immigrants endured the full impact of the Chinese Exclusion Act. Even after living in a society of hatred and having no promise of gaining citizenship in the future, Chinese citizens endured and continued to live on. Although it took nearly a century to finally repeal the Chinese Exclusion Act and change the mindset of a nation, Chinese immigrants and citizens today enjoy the benefits of a more open and accepting U.S. immigration policy.